European markets and started to create an economic boom that was underpinned by the improvements of farm productivity and the improvements of health conditions. Now, Asia still has hundreds of millions of very poor people, but the numbers are going down quickly. And I can say, ladies and gentlemen, with as much worry as we have about jobs going to India and China and the dislocations, history has shown time and again that when other parts of the world increase their economic well-being, this is a boon in the long term for the United States as well. It makes for a more peaceful world, a more just world, a world of more shared prosperity, a world of much more peaceful interaction, comfort, and strong forces of freedom and democracy. We learned this with Europe after World War II, that our Marshall Plan, which helped to put Europe back on its feet, was a great boon for American security, as well as for Europe's post-World War II economic recovery. Well, by now, what's happened is that extreme poverty, which was a condition that afflicted perhaps half of the world's population 40 years ago, is now a much smaller share of the world population today. The limits of extreme poverty are narrower. They're still tragic where extreme poverty exists, but they don't afflict so much of the world. There has really been material progress. The epicenter today of extreme poverty is not India or China, not Asia as it used to be, but Africa. Africa is the part of the world that has not yet benefited from the advances of technology, neither in farm technologies, the Green Revolution, which bypassed Africa till now, nor the health revolution, which for many reasons also bypassed Africa. In Africa, half of Africa's sub-Saharan population is living in extreme poverty. That proportion is not going down, it's going up. The numbers of people in Africa also rising significantly. Actually, the poorest places of the world have the fastest population growth, ironically, where they're less able to adapt and take care of the growing population. So the fact of the matter is, while extreme poverty has narrowed in many places and gives us realistic understanding of what it takes, the optimists who are too blithe in saying, well, this will take care of itself, are wrong, because extreme poverty has never taken care of itself. It's always been solved through help, through partnership, or through another great part of Catholic social teaching, the doctrine of solidarity. This has always played a role anywhere and everywhere in the world. The optimists are right that these are solvable problems, but they won't simply take care of themselves. If you do a hard-headed analysis of the challenge in Africa, you can learn a lot of things, especially if you keep it in the backdrop of the successes in recent decades in Asia. What you see is that those steps of improved food production, which led to food security and breaking the cycle of famine and instability in Asia, that the health breakthroughs, which brought down child mortality rates tremendously and raised life expectancy, that the connectivity to the world economy so that trade could be a vehicle of economic advance, all of those are possible for Africa as well, but have not yet occurred. Now, why was Africa not part of this process? Unfortunately, in our country, there are a lot of opinions that aren't right, which tend to blame the poor for their problems without understanding the structural reasons why different places have been able to escape from poverty while others not. For example, the Green Revolution started with two crops, with wheat and with rice. That's because two rich countries, the United States and Japan, had the most advanced technologies. Naturally, the U.S. had worked on its own main crop, which is wheat. Japan naturally had worked on its main crop, which was rice. South Asia and East Asia were lucky. They had places that used the same main crop varieties as does the United States and Japan, as do the United States and Japan. So it was rather not straightforward because it was a big accomplishment, but it was possible early on to take US and Japanese technologies and make them applicable directly in India and China. Amazingly, sadly, this could not happen in Africa at the beginning. Africa doesn't grow wheat. That's a temperate zone crop. Africa grows very little paddy rice in Madagascar, almost no place else. Africa's crops are quite different. Sorghum, millet, maize, teff, cassava, sweet potato, and many other tropical products that did not yet have in the 1960s and 70s a Green Revolution high-yield variety. Now, the Rockefeller Foundation and others did go to work and help support the research needed, but by the 1980s, when those high-yield varieties came, unfortunately, we had by that time moved to the wrong economic model, I can say. We were in, now, hope it's all right for Californians, but we were in the Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher era. And that was the total free market era. And people forgot the basics, that poorest farmers do not get out of their poverty alone. We were in the you solve your own problems or you don't solve them at all era. Technically, this became called the structural adjustment era. It was a disaster, by the way. It lasted 20 years. The World Bank and IMF enforced the elimination of subsidies for the poorest people. The poorest people were told, you recover your own costs. No subsidies for your farmers, just for our farmers. No help for the poorest. The problem is you get out of this on your own. This is a failed economic doctrine in our country as well. But it's absolutely the biggest failure when people have nothing. And it was ahistorical also, because people have never gotten out of extreme poverty on their own. This is the big myth. Unfortunately, as soon as people get out of extreme poverty, they often have a little bit of forgetfulness. They say, well, I did it on my own. And they don't remember who gave them the help along the way. And we as a country have a little bit of forgetfulness. How often do I hear or do I read people attacking me or writing me email that say, oh, Professor Sachs, why should we give help for Africa? After all, India did it on its own. What a bunch of nonsense. And I'm told all the time, this country or that country did it on its own. And I go back and I look at the aid levels that were given, and I know what happened, and I know how they got their start. And I know it's the Marshall Plan, or it was the help for Japan, or it was the help for Korea, or the help for Taiwan, or the Green Revolution, or the campaign against smallpox, or the global eradication of malaria campaign. Everybody always wants to say we did it on our own. Not one of us has ever accomplished anything on our own. It's our parents, it's our communities, it's our country, it's somebody that's helped us. That's true inherently if you're a human being. But we want to pretend in our economic doctrines it's some other way. It just wasn't true. But by the time practical help came for Africa, we had a doctrine that came out of an economics textbook, I'm afraid. Not a very good one, I could say. Not my textbook.